All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I got a timer, so I'm Lucas Hall. I'm from Northmont City Schools. We are north of Dayton, Ohio. This is my cohort / superior, Sean.
Sean Kaiser. I am the systems integration specialist. So anybody that works in education knows that titles don't really mean what you do, although mine, I guess, kind of does. I'm the server, network, desktop admin. I make everything work together. So lately that's been very
True.
accurate. So.
Yes, very, very accurate. My official title is Tech Level 2, whatever that means. I'm not a level 1, but I'm not a level 3. So my role is primarily the end user tickets get to me at the end of the road. I'm kind of like the last stop before we have to get management involved in stuff. I do a lot of the hardware side of things, a lot of the network wiring, physical stuff like that, which is kind of how I came to be in charge of this project that we're going to talk about. This slide deck, a PDF of the slides, links to any of the stuff that I mentioned throughout the presentation are web locks in that Google Drive folder. So feel free, make sure you capitalize properly. That does count. And that will be available at the end of the presentation as well. So if you don't get it down now, you can get it later. So here we go. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about who we are. We kind of already did that. Where we were in regards to the Xserve, the beautiful silver heater that sits in everybody's server room, running ever so quietly, 100% all the time. Where we wanted to be as far as phasing them out, replacing them, and then how we got there, what we used to replace them, how we did a lot of the migrations. We're also going to talk about NetBoot and Monkey, a little bit of how we do our imaging and management throughout the district, and how that played into this, and some changes that we made with how that was set up. We're going to look at some solution-specific examples, some neat stuff that we're looking at going forward, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. But if you have a question whenever throughout this, just throw a hand up and Darius will repeat it into the microphone. So I came on board at Northmont. Actually, it's a little over a year now. I came out with Sean last year as an attendee. Love this conference, love this community of people. I was already slated to come before I actually started working at Northmont. And I'd actually seen Sean on his presentations in the past before I even knew I put 2 and 2 together. So it's really neat, and it's a really great community, and I encourage you to get on Twitter, be active in the community, get on the IRC channel and all that stuff, because there's just friends here from all over the place and a lot of different people doing a lot of really cool stuff. So, but I digress. Back to where we were. How many of you currently have in some form or facet an Xserve of some generation running? All right. How many of you would consider those Xserves are running mission critical things? Okay, yeah. So right about where we were with some of that stuff. So absolutely. So our goal in this transition was to go to like a more modern, I'll say modern, file and service server model. But at the same time, we're a public school district, and we needed to be fiscally and operationally balanced. We couldn't go out and throw some NetApps in there and call it a day. We needed to do something that was kind of in the middle, that we could say, this is going to be cost effective, but it's going to deliver what we need it to deliver. So that's the beginning of our story. So a little bit about our district specifically. We're a K-12 institution. We have 10 buildings total. Of those 10 buildings, 2 are not schools. So we have a service center and a central office that are more, what you would imagine a business kind of situation. Overall, we have, it's probably more than this, but 6,300 staff and students in the district. 2,100 one-to-one devices. I put an asterisk. Staff in the district have MacBook Pros. Most of the full-time staff do. Aides don't, unfortunately. And then we're rolling out one-to-one iPads at the high school currently. So this year's freshmen, sophomores, juniors will all have iPads, and then there is a small batch of seniors that are still part of the original pilot program. So not this fall, but next fall will be fully one-to-one at our high school with iPads. So it's pretty crazy. Here is a picture from our server room taken last week when we finally started to really clear out some of the old servers. This was a big project for us. We were in a place where we had 10.5 running on some servers. We just don't upgrade it if you don't have to. Absolutely. And then we also used them for services. Pretty much everything was reliant on those Xserves. So several of them, I believe, at the time we transferred everything over, were actually full. I want to say like one of the middle school staff ones was full, and yeah, they were not doing too hot. So it took some visioning because we needed to determine, where we wanted to be. We have these all-in-one solutions that can do pretty much everything across the board. A lot, I'd say, maybe half of our stuff was G4s or more.
Stuff that we were running, I think we had a couple G5s, but most of it was Intel.
Yeah, Intel. So, okay. So, some of the we still have some that we could get up to Yo-Yo if we wanted to. Like we could. We were like, okay, long term, Yo-Yo, the hardware is only going to last so long. So we wanted something a little bit more, fiscally responsible in the longevity that was in place. So if there was a failure, we could, be prepared. So we looked at all these different stuff and we said, okay, well, it kind of needs to do two things. We want to rearrange that stuff, and we want it to do two things. We need services and we need storage. So let's start looking at devices that satisfy both. Well, not so much out there, especially in a Mac-centric environment. When you're looking around, there's not a whole lot that'll do all these different things. So the obvious choice for services, as I hang my head in shame, Mac Mini. So what we did is we took Mac Minis and put Mac Minis in all the buildings to act as services. DHCP, caching services, those are kind of disabled right now, and stuff like that. So we have a main DNS server. The Monkey admin server is running off of a Mini. The NetBoot NBI sits on a Mini. But what we didn't do is we actually didn't, during this migration, put the directory service back on a Mini. And I'll talk about that more a little bit later. So we kind of have all our services, for the most part, figured out. And then came the storage. So we needed to figure out what were we going to use for storage. This decision was actually made before I was even on staff. So I kind of inherited this choice. And I'm, for the most part, happy with it thus far. We went ahead and went with Synology. Synology NAS. These aren't the rack mountable units. This is the actual unit. That might be a 513. I just wanted, let me just say this. This is going to be a lot of me talking about Synology because that's where we were. Like, that's where we are, and that's where we live. I used QNAP in my previous life before working for the school district, and it was a whole, it's a whole different ballgame. It's still a variation of Linux, but it's their own flavor, it's their own tools with pretty much the same tools at the root. But so I got kind of excited looking at the Synologies because, oh man, they have all these different apps that you can add onto them, all these services, all these servers. I mean, you can have all these different things, DNS, directory, VPN, proxy, like all that stuff right there. But as we got to tinker with it more, and I'll talk about more of this in the whole picture, we determined those weren't really feasible options for us. Now, I'm not saying that's not a feasible option for you if you're running a smaller shop or maybe like a single or two, local areas. So more specifically, storage. We use the DS1513, which is actually out of production now. It's an older model. 213 gigahertz Intel Atom, 4 gigs of ECC RAM, DDR3, and then so what we only put in three. We only used 3 of the 5 bays with 2 terabyte Western Digital Reds, and that's just for building storage. So when I say building storage, staff mobile home accounts, any kind of shared folders among the staff, those will all reside on these Synology boxes. But to put that into perspective, what that actually looks like in our district is something like this. So now we have 17 boxes scattered throughout the district for both staff and students, starting in the 7th grade. So 7th through 12th grade, everybody gets a mobile home to log into. So they can log in, mount their home directory on any of the Macs in the building. We still do that because that's the way we've always done it. So we've continued to do that, and Synology's worked great thus far for that. So student homes and staff mobile syncs all lived on these Synology boxes. So I came in, I started last summer, and my boss, who I didn't really know at the time, was like, hey, you need to get these working. Okay. So I was like, okay, so what do we need to do? So started going through. Sean had already set them up. They were pretty much out of the box. They already had their drives. They had one link connected. They were on. They weren't really named. We didn't have a naming system and stuff. So I started thinking, okay, we get them named, we put the names on them. They're all where they need to be. So my first big task is what I called the Great Migration. Moving all of the data off of an Xserve onto the Synology box. So what was nice about this for us was it was one-to-one. One Xserve was going to one Synology. Another Xserve was going to another Synology. It was one-to-one. I wish I took a picture of it. I had a dry erase board above my desk with every server listed out, where it was going, and what was contained on it, and to make sure that the permissions were correct once it was transferred. So I looked and I talked to a couple people on Twitter, and I said, what's the best way to do this? What's the best tool? Is there a tool? What can I do to check it? And I ended up just using rsync. It's an incredibly powerful tool. It works. I used a lot of flags, and I'll put them up there for what I did. So what I would do is I'd SSH into the Synology and rsync over. This is actually the second sync that I did, but I rsynced it as an archive, which preserves pretty much everything. I made it human readable with progress because I like to see what's actually going on and seeing the progress, and so I kind of have an idea how long it's going to take. That actually helped me because I found out that hidden on these Xserves were entire grade levels that had graduated like 5 years ago, because Sean just put a nice little period slash and hid everything, but they were still taking up space on the disk. I was like, Sean, do we really need like 2006 student files? He said, thankfully he said no, so we got rid of them. So basically, SSH into the Synology box, rsynced it over. Went through, made sure the permissions were correct and everything to work with the home sync, and I'd say it pretty much went off without a hitch. I did it once in January as the first test run, and then this is the second one I did. The delete flag just says if it doesn't exist on your destination, get rid of it. So after that, after I kind of had everything moved over, now I started to think, all right, for the most part, the Xserve's out of the picture. We haven't gone live yet at this point with home syncs. This is all just moving everything over. So then I started to think, I'm just gonna see how fast it is. I'm gonna see how much faster it is. So at our building, we had an Xserve and a Synology. I was doing this from a wired machine, 1010. Yeah, I was on 1010. I was using a 1010 DIMage via AFP, single network interface, little over 7 gigs. So you can see the difference between the two. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff that could play into this, but 13 meg increase that's a big jump. And then if you start looking at how that'll affect everything, that right there, this is already starting to pay for itself. I was pleasantly surprised with that. The biggest thing that I was happy about with this is it was a single network interface. These Synology boxes, these models came with quad NIC on the back, so 4 Ethernet ports, which we were running teamed together with LACP, which is, I don't know if it's a Cisco protocol to team all the network ports together, so it can effectively run 4 gigs throughput. Now, these are going to be used for home syncs where users are connecting, so it will load balance the connections over all the links. So if say 4 users are connected, it may balance 1 to 1 based off of what the needs of the user is. But once the connection's made, it will retain that NIC, is my understanding. So in short, what that means is it's going to balance the users out over the NICs, and then you're going to draw on those single gig speeds. So effectively, it's 4 gigs you have to work with, but depending on how the balancing goes, that's going to affect your stuff, your results. So we talked about how the Synology boxes move into our storage. So then this was, I remember when I saw it in the server room the first time, I was like, wait, what's that one do? So there's actually another layer to our redundancy. The district had purchased another Synology server, a DS31612XS, whatever. It has a 3.1 gigahertz Intel Core i3. We ended up putting 18 gigs of ECC RAM in it, and when I started, it had 4 terabytes times 10. So effectively 32 after the RAID. This was interesting to me because I came from a place where our policy was keep everything always. Who in here has any experience with LTO? Does anybody have any LTO tape experience? I came from a shop where it was a video production shop, and we would just shuttle everything off to LTO. If it was older than so many years, put on the LTO tape, put the LTO tape in the cabinet, and pray that nobody ever wants it again, because then you have to get it back out and go through that whole process. So this was exciting to me. But I can never figure out why they just didn't buy a rack unit. But that's just personal preference. These aren't rack units. They sit on a shelf in a rack, taking up more space than if we would have got a rack unit. But I digress. It wasn't my choice. So these have Synology hybrid RAID. This is comes on the Synology boxes. We have 2. We actually added an extension after we calculated about how much space we would need. That's another tip I have. If you're planning on doing one of these migrations, think about the long term. Don't think about how much data you have now. Think about how much data you're going to have. Because we ended up buying an expansion unit for it, and putting 28 more terabytes into it. These are, I believe, we have the first one formatted with Synology 1 disk failover. So if 1 disk fails, it's fine. If 2 does, you start to lose stuff. And then the second one is dual disk redundancy. You can lose up to 2 drives. We ended up putting 2 additional drives in as hot spares. So if the NAS detects a failure, it'll automatically start building that one of the hot spares into that volume. And then we also put 2 480 gig SSDs into the primary unit for caching, which seems to help a lot, especially with some of the larger backups that we do, which I'm going to talk about next. I know a guy that I actually met here last year, and then we've kind of conversed on Twitter. It's one of the few MacAdmins out there that's feel like he lives in the Synology realm like I do. He had some SSDs that were on the Synology approved SSD list, and then were taken off because of some of the stuff he had with him. So I would recommend if you're going to buy a NAS, whatever model you buy, make sure that any of the cache drives or any of the hard drives you buy are on an approved list from that maker, just to play it safe. Because they ended up shipping him a whole new unit because of all the trouble that their approved drives had caused. We haven't had any issues at all with Synology thus far, so which we are thankful for. So this is kind of our backup our backup tier structure. User computers, machines, teacher laptops, desktops, back up to different building servers based off of what building they are assigned to. And then the Synology boxes all the building servers back up to the main archive. Question?
Are you staging data from workstations on tier 1 to tier 2 via the home directories?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We use the home directories as the sync to sync from the machines to the Synology boxes. There's Synology sync apps that we tinkered with, and it just ate like CPU usage and stuff on the machine. So we're like, no. It's actually, we got better performance out of just doing the home directory sync to move it from here to here. We actually use a proprietary Synology sync to go from the building servers to the main archive. And then we actually, I got that in there twice. Yeah.
What protocol do you use from client to server? Is it AFP or
Client server, yeah, it's AFP. We still go over AFP for home sync. So we've seen a little bit of better results speedwise in tests, although we've kind of heard the rumors that AFP supposedly is going away with the new SMB version, but we've kind of stuck to our guns on it, and it's worked great. So what I ended up doing is I ended up saying, okay, let's start syncing these bad boys. And this only shows so starting at 4 p.m. and going till about 6 a.m., all of these servers alternate every other day and sync back to the main directory. Might be a little bit overkill, but if it's only syncing changes, might as well be safe with it. We have decent links between our buildings, so I wanted to take advantage of it. So, and then I actually just shared this calendar out with Sean and our boss and a couple other people to say, hey, this is when they're syncing. And that actually like the calendar just to view where stuff is. So that's our tier structure. Something else that kind of came around for us to add in this box was our other servers throughout the district that we didn't think, like I didn't anticipate them. When I saw these Synology boxes, I saw building servers, user data. Well, we have our web server. Meal Magic is a server that we use for food service. There's stuff that the maintenance uses, stuff like that. And what we've actually started to do is using a Synology app on those servers. We'll actually back them up to this volume right here. So now we have not only a tertiary redundancy for user data, we have a second redundancy level for other servers throughout the district, and including like the SQL database will back up to there. We have fingerprint scanners at our elementary school, one of the elementary schools. And all that data will back up there. So just stuff that we just want to be safe goes off to the secondary unit. This next one was good. I was sitting at my desk one day, and we're a Google school. All our emails done through Google. All of our domain stuff is handled through there. So I was thinking, we have Google for Education, and Google for Education has. Does anybody know how much drive space you're allotted per account in Google? Exactly. So I was like, wait a minute. Synology has a Google Drive sync feature, and we have. So I went out and made a district archive account with our Google Education, and I was like, let's see what this bad boy can do. I haven't completely unleashed it yet, but as of this afternoon, we have close to Keynote crashing. Close to 565 gigs of space used on our Google Drive just for archive. So what I ended up putting in here was, I think the SQL database. It's not the main one. It's not the production one, but a couple different things. It's just like, here's some stuff we need to keep. I want to test it out. So I would say, QNAP or Synology, whichever you choose, if you want to, even other ones, have some kind of cloud syncing option. You can go to Glacier, you can go to AWS, you can do all that stuff. So now you're talking something that you can kind of control and back up what you want to back up. The only thing I would caution you with is what the data that you're backing up and the source that you're backing up to, make sure that that is in agreement with any kind of restrictions, you know, that your district or organization may have. Now, that may not be easy for, you know, a private business that has to pay for storage, but being an educational institution, I was like, heck, let's try it. So I asked my boss, and he's like, sure. So far, so good. So I'm going to slowly add some more stuff to it. Yeah?
Sorry to interrupt. Do you have user quotas?
We don't. I don't believe we have any user quotas right now.
How much data do you think you're actually storing? 'Cause
Well, this is not, this right here, we're only using for more of like the web server, SQL database, a lot of more what I would consider, sorry, but I don't consider our users' data really high priority data. So this is more of our upper tier stuff for now. I've toyed with the idea of just making one of these accounts for each of the user Synology machines and syncing them up from there.
what do you think your overall system usage is?
On just overall for this
You're guessing.
this guy, I think we probably have, I'm going to say 12, maybe 12 terabytes used for everything in district right now. So we have probably, you know, 60% headroom to grow right now. And what we've seen, especially with, if I can go back, especially with like the students and stuff, they're keeping less on the local machines or on their local account, and they're putting everything in Drive. As we're a Google school, teachers want everything turned in Drive, and there's kind of an inherent like documents and stuff go that way, although they still have a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna switch speeds here and talk about how net booting and Monkey play into this. Is there any Monkey users in the house? All right. And then net booting for imaging, image, deploy studio, etc. Okay, sweet. And I'm going to talk about how we used, and this is more of a Synology thing, but how we use them to minimize the WAN impact and keep multiple repos in sync. So just a quick review. You know, you have a Mac Mini sitting out there. It has your net boot. You press N, start it up. Net boot says, hey, okay, deploy studio, pushes you over. You select your actual image that's stored on a different repo. Same for Monkey. We actually stored our Monkey repo on the Synology, so Monkey, the app, will just point towards that, and that's just what I'm going to talk through here. So we have the server sitting out there. This is kind of what I said. The server syncs its stuff down, whether it's a disk image or any apps that are pushed out by Monkey. So the user goes up and queries, hey, I'm trying to net boot, or I'm trying to run Monkey update. So then it talks to the repo to get the data. Well, in district, we have the pre-flight script in Monkey, and then another thing in Deploy Studio that will actually, based off of what building you're in, I think, is it subnet that it goes off of?
Yep.
If it notices you change building, it will point you to the local repo. So whether I'm assigned to the service center or the high school, if I go to the high school and I run Monkey, I'm going to hit Monkey update, and then it's going to say, okay, your local repo is now the high school based off your IP address and what subnet you fall into. Super handy, cuts way down on WAN traffic, especially if you're imaging. So great tool for both of those. And what's nice about Synology, and this is actually, I think this is, yeah, that's somewhat current, 72 hard drives total, is, you can't really see this, so this shared folder sync. So there's a SharePoint on all of the staff Synology machines throughout the district that's called management. And then I think we have a DS Masters one too for the Deploy Studio Masters. Yep. And what this does is we have one main unit that will update the repos on. So Sean will move, whatever is getting deployed for Monkey into the Monkey repo on one server, which is the archive server. And then with Synology Sync, what it'll do is on detection is it'll sync it out to all the other servers in the district on modification. So as soon as he drops an image in there, it's already syncing out to all the other servers in the district. So one head unit updating all 16 servers like that. All I had to do is join them in. Synology has a great tool called CMS, and this actually lets you get an overview of all your servers, your volume health, your disk health, if there's any updates on any of the machines. I do all my updates through CMS. I go to one login. I say, okay, DSM 5.2's out, update all of them, and it updates all 17 servers at once, 10 minutes. They're all back up and running. I get this back up. I see what's back up, if anything failed, if I have to go through, anything like that. Great tool that has helped me a ton. It also allows you to apply groups and policies to all your servers, whether it's recycle bins, retention policies. You can even join them to there's one that you don't see here that's actually over all the servers, and that's to join them into the directory. Was just one policy I did and then applied it to all of the different servers. So this was something that we didn't anticipate having, but using and loving.
You said earlier you aren't using the Mac Minis for directory service. What are you using for directory service?
I will get to that. Yeah, we're using Linux for that. So we will get there, I promise. So yeah, and then so shared folder sync. This is what I talked about. The different destinations, the folders that are syncing, and then whatever you want to name the tasks. They show up as successful. Once they go through, you can check the logs. It's a great system, and it's made our job a lot easier than having to worry about syncing stuff out. So this is just that. So the update goes to our main archive, and that then pushes it out. And then in each individual building, those updates are available to the users. So I got a duplicate there. So a single point of modification allows the entire organization to have deployment. That was something, again, we didn't set out to utilize, but was amazing. And now we don't have to worry about syncing those repos at all. It just does it all automatically. And then through the directory service, they know which one to hit for the home sync. And then Deploy Studio will just repoint it for deployment. So in brevity, here you go. These are our directory services. What we ended up doing was we had storage and we had services, and the services being DHCP for the subnet and Apple caching, stuff like that, and then putting the directory service on a Cent box, which Sean can talk a little bit about. What was your reasoning? Just because you were familiar with Cent?
We went through probably 4, 5, 6, I don't know how many different iterations of where we were going to put the directory.
We originally even tried to put it on the Synology boxes with their directory.
Right.
server.
I mean, we started with we were going to go with Open Directory, but then we were implementing 802.1x with Aruba's ClearPass system, and Open Directory didn't expose the password to be able to authenticate. So we said, okay, Open Directory's out. Then we looked at CentOS doing OpenLDAP there. And we said, well, that's going to take a lot of work. Maybe we can just do it on the Synology server using Synology directory. So started working on that. Ran into something, I can't remember now what we ran into. Something didn't work with, obviously, the Synology servers to talk to the directory. But something in
ClearPass, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It was so much.
So
we ended up back on CentOS. I found a great website, serverworld, I think, .com, had a really good step-by-step, depending on what flavor of Linux you're on, what you want to do, walk you through stuff. So now we're on OpenLDAP running on CentOS. And
this was kind of, at our point where we realized, hey, this is more than just replacing an Xserve. This is a lot bigger, because at the same time we were doing our Xserve replacement, we're also implementing 802.1x, new directory service, and everything is connected. We kind of just talked about this, use with the new Synology DSM, OSX ClearPass. This was an example of one of our brainstorming sessions on one of our mini whiteboards and how our network needed to function and what needed to talk to what. There were many of these days of trying it, and actually I don't even think this one.
Yeah, this isn't
This
the
is the
final.
old one because we still had it on
Yeah.
the Synology, but yeah, it was quite a fun time for that. So this is where we were before Xserves Open Directory on 10.5, PSKs for staff student Wi-Fi networks, and now we're on the Synology servers with OpenLDAP, Samba 3, and 802.1x security rolling out throughout the district, which is going to be awesome. Those PSKs, they just have a way of finding their way out to everybody. So ideally, where we would like to go is just completely ditch the Mini and move over just to a Linux box, just because at this point it's just DHCP running on them. A couple apps. I could think maybe I have AST running. If anybody has an AST server, I have one of those running on a Mini. That's probably not going to go away. But for everything else, for the buildings and stuff, we're looking at getting rid of the Minis. So in conclusion, as we did this project, Sean found this. He actually sent this to me like maybe an hour before this presentation, and I was like, yes, yes. Because as you go and you get done, the done just is completely evades you. So, man, I'm really happy with where we are. Again, I'm not selling Synology. Sean tweeted before they even bought the box, says, hey guys, MacAdmins, who's using what? What do you guys like? And a couple guys were like, hey, Synology, check them out. Works good for us. So that's kind of where we ended up with it. And we've had really good success with them. There's QNAP, there's NetApp if you got all kinds of money, free NAS, and then looking at alternatives to the Mac Minis. And that's kind of some of the stuff that, in looking forward, BSD Pi, there was a session on that today. Pepin did a great session on that, so I encourage you to go back and watch that. That's actually completely removing, needing a Mac for netboot. It's all done through Python that runs either on Linux or inside a Docker container. Graham Gilbert's got Imager up on GitHub that does a very thin, you just do a thin client imaging if you're using Monkey. That's another way. Some stuff that we kind of need as an organization need to start shifting towards is, really looking at our logs, putting all of our logs in one place, kind of having alerts and filtering through that. There's a great session on SNMP monitoring today as well. I encourage you to go back and watch that session when they're released. Some kind of web dashboard, all with the goal that one day we would be Mac Mini free, because it's just kind of overhead that we don't need to have. So,
did you get rid of Apple content caching?
Content?
That's that would probably at this point be the one thing that's going to make us keep the Minis until somebody figures out how to make that work on non-Apple hardware. So.
And really, I don't even know if we have that. How many of those we have running right now?
Well, currently we only have one. We're in the middle of back at home. We've got 5 or 6 people setting up 500 iPads for next year's freshmen. So I disabled the caching servers in all the other buildings except ours to keep all of that caching server traffic local within our building on our network. So it wasn't going, even though we have 100 meg links between the buildings, we have gig link and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi in our building, so I figured keep everything local. So
are you exceeding the Apple recommended limit of 500 devices per content caching server? And if so, how's that going?
When they're all fired up, we've got 10 caching servers for 2,500 iPads probably. So, but they're mostly at the high school and middle school. We've got 2 or 3 at this point caching servers on site at the high school and middle school. So we are technically we're exceeding on the local subnets, but district wide we're under that threshold. So
And there was some issues with the caching servers that we ran into. I remember last year where the body that governs the schools around, the different subnets assigned to each school district IP range, they had, I don't know if they had something disabled. So our caching servers were talking to another district's caching servers.
Yeah, we were all sharing one external address. So when the caching servers registered with Apple, Apple said, you guys are all part of one organization. So our 10 were helping all the other districts, and all of our machines were potentially talking to caching servers that were across the city or different counties or whatever. So we worked with our
What'd you call it?
DA site, ISP, whatever. And we have our own external address now, so only our servers, our machines. We actually got to the point where we were hitting the limit of number of connections through their firewall, so they set up a second external address, which then made me have to go to Yo-Yo server so I could do double addresses in caching servers. So depending on how machines went out, they would still talk to us. So.
Yeah, what hardware are you using for CentOS then?
It's CentOS is running in a VM on about a 2-year-old DACTech virtualization server.
Intel based, yeah. I don't know the specs off the older ones, so yeah.
Good.
How did you handle passwords between Open Directory and moving to Open LDAP?
Not a best practice at all. Before, the little checkbox that said allow users to change their password, that was unchecked. So I knew what all their passwords were. So when we set up the new, I just set them back to what we initially set them up as. So that's going to change soon so that we can allow our users, especially with 802.1x. The kids, somehow, I'm still not entirely sure how they figured out what the pre-shared keys for the networks were. So they don't like the fact that they're limited on the student network. So they put themselves on the staff network to get to YouTube and Facebook and stuff like that. So we definitely want to be able to control, let the staff at least and students really change their passwords moving forward. So.
It surely wasn't that teacher that had it on a note card posted on the bulletin board.
Did you say earlier that you disqualified the Synologies for running your DNS? And if so, why?
I don't think we ever disqualified them for DNS. I just think we just, during the process, had never migrated off of what we had.
And
so we have never tried it.
Our main DNS servers are still on Xserves, so that's kind of a next step of, where's it going to go? Probably we're running, an internal DNS for, all of our internal stuff, and we have split DNS for split zones for our public domains as well. So it'll probably end up going to CentOS just because that's where most of our services are ending up anyway. So
part of this overhaul, we did get 2 additional VM servers that we're starting to get up and running, and we have, and this could be a whole nother talk next year, but setting up more of a redundant kind of failover option where, we have snapshots of certain VMs sitting on other VMs. The older VMs snapshots are sitting on the newer VM snapshots. Vice versa, if something happens to one hardware, we'll have it running on the other hardware, and that kind of goes along with that. So right now, this is just a free-for-all time for you to pick our brains. We'd love to hear questions and comments. Like, we'll do our best, 1, 2, 3, and we'll just keep going around. I'll do my best to repeat. Go ahead.
You said you had the students using, all the end users using home syncing. How do you have issues with that, with home syncing, or specifically the library folder?
The question was, do we have issues with home syncing, specifically library folder? My only beef, I don't personally care for it, but we haven't had really any issues with it. It's kind of odd. In one of the buildings, the high school, we had it tied in so where they could actually use their credentials to log on from the Windows machines too. and a lot of that structure would obviously be retained. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
We occasionally run into, the users forget that they're logged in somewhere and log in somewhere else. And so now it's a matter of which copy do you want to keep, the local or the remote.
Do you have it like syncing daily or like?
With the new setup, we changed it. We used to do kind of a full sync at log in, log out, and background sync. At this point now, we're doing, I think, browser preferences at login.
Yep.
And then that's it at login. We synchronize documents, desktop maybe in the background, and we don't sync anything at logout because 802.1x has already closed the connection when they log out. So we were running into errors there.
So we've drastically, and hopefully that helps with a lot of our size, reduced what's actually getting synced through for the user within the user folder.
So in the background, what's syncing, you said, is your desktop and your documents, and that's it?
Yeah.
So nothing's syncing during logout?
No.
So the users to put something in the pictures. My question, I guess I'm really asking is, we have a Synology and we'd like to move Homes drives onto it, but our issue is that you can't put an iPhoto directory on anything that's not an Apple server, because then when it goes to sync, the directory won't be created. It just won't sync. So I was wondering if you were syncing the My Pictures folder on the Mac onto the Synology.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah. And that was more of like a size kind of thing. Like, more than likely, the only thing in there was personal photos. And is that something that we as a district should, one, have, and two, be responsible for? So, and that's a big thing that I had to sit down with Sean and get the boss to sit still long enough to say, hey, you need to tell us what we have to keep. What do we have to keep? And what do we need to keep? And what do you want us to keep? Because those are all vastly different things. And like I said, when I was back in my LTO days, it was keep everything always. And that's no place that any organization should be. So if there isn't anything pre-existing for your organization, I say either like you write something up, get some verbiage so you know what you're responsible for keeping, and that you can best set out a plan to keep that. So did I see one over here first? Yeah.
I guess I was just curious, what would you guys do differently if the answer was, I want everything backed up, I want everything synced?
I would say I have been really happy with Synology. I would say bigger units, maybe larger drives. A lot of the bigger units, rack mount units, you can start talk about 10 gig fiber backbones instead of single gig four times, stuff like that. We're set to open a new high school over Christmas break. We have 3 weeks to move from our old building to our new building, and that's kind of helped prompt some of this because we know we have a larger backbone coming. So to answer the question, that was if we had to do it again, but we had to keep everything, I'd say just you could kind of expound on each of the levels. The building servers could be a little bit bigger, maybe a rack mount unit, a couple more drives, and then the main head unit could be, a full chassis, more drives, more storage, more RAM, just kind of beef it up a little bit. So. No, you're right.
Maximum throughput test on the Synology units?
No, I have never had a maximum throughput test. For our deployment, doing the home syncs and stuff, even if every staff member at the largest building, happened to be connected at the same time, our high school unit is going to have no, that's not the high school unit that has the 10 gig link.
Yeah, the master.
The master has the 10 gig link. So I guess, no, we've never done a max throughput test. But our thought was it's fourfold probably better than the Xserves were, and they could still hold their own. So I don't really have an answer for that one.
Kind of following along with that, what has been the maximum throughput that you've seen come through during imaging?
During imaging, when I was, let's see, what did we test in your office that day? I think 160 that we got when we were imaging those 5 machines. as a test in your
that
office.
sounds about right. 160 megabits.
Yeah,
Or 160 megabytes, so
and that was wired.
800 megabits.
That was wired to a switch that was trunk back to
Yeah,
the switch that it was on.
yeah. One of the other things we've done is, between switches, we've done at least 2-port trunks, to increase the bandwidth so that, okay, fine, we've got 4 gigs coming out of the server into a core switch, but then everybody's on one switch that has a 1 gig link. So we tried to, upgrade the network connectivity as well.
I've never seen more than like that 160, 161, and that was on the building level servers. I've never done it with the. I never actually went back and looked at like the archive when it archives it back up or anything like that. But yeah, so it's,
What file systems do the Synology boxes run?
it's a Synology. It's a Linux. It's a Linux flavor. It's X4 file extension. I haven't done too much on the CLI with the Synologies. I know
was
just some,
wondering if you ran into any problems with it, like preserving resource port information in that file.
I haven't.
No, and that was one of the things as we were trying to decide, do we go with AFP, do we go with SMB for home directories? We were having trouble.
When syncing over SMB, some of the
Yeah, because
permissions being retained.
it wasn't bringing something over, so we tested it with AFP. Resource forks were coming over okay, and so
That's why we stuck with it. Cool. I saw it back there first.
So we also made the move last year from Xserves to minis, and we ended up keeping Open Directory just because we are unfortunately married to managed preferences and work group managers. I'm wondering, in your setup, since work group manager is going away, is there anything you guys do with managed preferences?
we've really tried not to manage very much at all. We're kind of a thing that didn't make this was we're going to have a couple minis running Open Directory for groups and some of the like mobile home sync settings. That's just it's kind of a waste of a mini to basically do that. I know I could do it with the profile. It's Lucas hates it when I say this, the way we've always done it. And I haven't taken the time to, test profiles with mobile home sync. So, we could do it that way, create a profile. We use JSS for our iPads. I could create a profile in JSS, download it, and, deploy it with Monkey, deploy it with Puppet, something like that. So.
Just as kind of a comment, as Apple has eliminated the entry-level MacBook, and we're looking at education moving more towards, and this is just my niche, I'm in education, K-12, but as we're moving more towards iPads and Chromebooks, we actually took a look at, do we need to sync data at all? Because we implemented Google Apps for education, and we decided not to. We're no longer in the business of syncing user data. We tell the teachers, get a time machine drive, or put all of your data in your Google Drive, one or the other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the student Macs, the few that are left at this point, are used for like music programs, and we just told the teachers, assign them.
Yeah.
Have the kid use the same Mac every day.
I am envious of you because I was like, that's where when I came in, I was just like, well, why are we spend all this money? Why are we syncing this stuff? And what was the answer, Sean?
We always have done that.
Yeah, that's the way it's always been. So I was just a young gun coming into a new job trying to change everything at once.
One of the things too, we've talked about, like when we switched to Google, we gave the staff new machines. We said, okay, we're not going to give them Office because they've got Google. They can do everything they need to in Google Docs. So we didn't deploy Office when we first gave them out. Huge pushback. Well, you didn't tell us that you weren't going to give us Office. Okay, well, we'll give you Office for a limited amount of time. Well, that was 2.5 years ago, and they still have Office. So I think as we move forward, especially what we're seeing, like Luke said, at the lower, the middle school level, we're seeing less and less data on the server, more and more in Google. That's going to, continue to happen. And I think 3-4 years from now, when we're looking at potentially replacing Synology servers or, whatever, at that point we may say no more file services. Can we get there? Hopefully. Will we get there? Who knows?
On that, and the beautiful thing about like Chromebooks and stuff is like you don't have an option. Like just you put it up, put it in the Google Cloud. Like, and I preach that from a PD standpoint as much as possible. Like, your drive only has 200 gigs available on it for you to use, but you have an infinite amount in the cloud. So it's just a lot of that's like trying to get that transition of somebody who's been on, since AppleWorks. Hey, can you open this AppleWorks file? It's like, all right, let's go. Here we go. Moving forward.
True story a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that really happened. Yep. Hat first, and then we'll come around.
Two comments that concern me. Number one, you guys not have data restriction controls? It doesn't sound like you do, storing everything at Google. And secondly, speed. Like the users that I support, we have a mutiny waiting for everything to sync all the time. And we're an I2 node, and putting anything up to the cloud is just slow in comparison to the server structure that we have. So I'm just curious if it's a bunch of Word documents, that's fine. That doesn't take a whole lot of time to sync, but we're dealing with every one of my users is generating a couple hundred gigabytes of data all the time. And I just can't imagine.
Yeah, you're talking a completely different scale of service. This is like file services, Word docs, presentations, like local, simple, what a kid would do in school kind of stuff. That's our reality. Now, actually, my previous job before I started the school was more your reality. I worked for a church. It was a mega church north of Dayton, and we had a small in-house video production. And that was our reality. I mean, we had a couple like a Mac Pro, MacBook Pros. These people were churning out all kinds of data. I ended up putting in I forget the model, it was a QNAP just for the video. And everything was archived off to it, but nothing like what you're saying with, have I ever experienced the kind of need for speed that you're talking? Are you talking like, are you guys sharing like project files on the server, and then you have multiple people referencing the project files?
Genomics data to Excel files.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's all centrally stored, and just the latency alone
Sure. Yeah.
would make me just go crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Anybody else to use it.
I wouldn't even say it's an option for your deployment. But for like our users who are it's archiving their Word docs back off, or it's saving their presentations, stuff like that.
You guys don't have any restrictions from, privacy data, like through the
We have
school district?
we have the state mandates regulations. The only stuff that we've put in the cloud through the archive that we've put in the cloud as the tech department has been different areas that I've had approval from my boss to test with the archive. Now the teachers are putting their stuff in the cloud, and this is where it gets kind of sticky. Like, it's who's responsible for what the teachers are storing in Google. Is it us because we're managing their machines, or is it their superiors because they're in charge of their data? So, I don't really know. Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing: is we don't have any real way to go through and check the teachers to make sure they're not putting stuff like my wife actually works at the high school, and she's an intervention specialist, and she deals with special needs, and they have to write what are called IEP documents. I don't know if that's nationwide or just in Ohio, but we actually use an online program specifically for those documents, so they stay within that kind of approved area. That's about the extent I can talk. I saw a couple more hands. Yeah.
What do you have a method for creating users in the OpenApp app? Like, I'm assuming you're not just saying on the command line.
It's a process that it started off back when we were running Active Directory. I got a script from somebody, another school district in Ohio that created stuff with VB script. So we get the roster from our DA site overnight that has all the kids in it. And then I, go through there. It migrated when we moved to Open Directory to a Bash script. Yes, Bash from long time ago. Forgive me. That did the same thing. And then as we moved to Open LDAP, I modified the script some more. Then as I was working with staff accounts, I said, you know what, I want to have some sort of system that I can create staff and student accounts with one script instead of having, two different processes depending on what kind of the user it is. So I kind of created a data structure with about 16 or 17 fields of data that I need to create the accounts. And then I have a Python script that reads through that file and creates the account. I used the SMB LDAP user add, I think, to create the user, and then some LDAP modify to create, modify some of the actual LDAP attributes for the user. So no, I'm not creating 6,300 users by hand at all. It took, when I ran it, it took, what did I say, 20 minutes maybe to create all of our users and set all the options. And so.
I was curious, when you migrated from an AFP-based server to the Samba-based server, do you have any issues with file name conventions?
That was what it was. It was file server. The file name. That's why we didn't go with Samba. That's why we ended up staying with AFP on the Synology servers, was the file names. So
yes.
Yes, we did. And we worked with it. We thought about at one point, writing our own. I was working on writing an rsync user data sync process that would just run for the users. And then we said, why are we reinventing this wheel? Apple's already got the home directory sync. Let's just use that. We'll use AFP to get around the file names.
Yeah, there was a week or so there where it was like, well, we could do this. And then we're like, no.
Yeah.
Time, effort, energy. Yeah, it just wasn't.
I'm going to go back to your PowerPoint slide thing. Folder synchronization with CMS. Does that only work when two Synologies are talking, or can you do that with a shared folder on another server?
Okay, so the shared folder sync that I mentioned is Synology proprietary. It is within their disk services. I have looked, and I did look, just because my first thought was, okay, somebody's got a modified rsync script out there somewhere that either runs on a timed basis or notices on modification or something. And I did find a couple. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head now. I know that there are scripts out there that exist for that. But that one specifically was the Synologies all talking to each other.
Yeah.
I want to sync my deploy images with the Synology, but I don't want to have to move the folder. I just want it to sync across on the backup.
Yeah. I know there's either there's got to be something existing for that you can modify for your
Some
your
sort of, you
purpose.
can set it at the, your Synology server app or, whatever server is an rsync server and, just rsync it over that way on a schedule or.
We cron our
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, and even if you wanted to do it from the Synology side, they have scheduled tasks that you can actually run scripts, just schedule them out and stuff. If you wanted to do it that way, let's go here first and then back. Yeah.
Just as a response to the gentleman over there who was worried about the gray area with the data storage and putting student data in the cloud, there is a plugin for Google Apps for Education, and I think it even works on some of the other cloud storage services called Cloud Lock, that allows you to police what kind of data gets pushed up in there.
If everything got new and you had plenty of money, but you didn't have to worry about migration, would you still use the Synology solution, or would you do something totally different with Monkey or Casper or FileWave or Absolute?
If money wasn't an option, oh man, I don't even know. Yeah.
If Start fresh, what would you do? Would you do this, or would you change to something else?
Knowing where we are with our district financially, I'd say we'd probably do pretty much the same thing again. Just out of fiscal responsibility, it's for us and our need. It was a lot about our need, like what do our users need, what does the district need, and it doesn't need as much speed it kind of needs a lot of storage now, but maybe it doesn't need to last forever, So it really filled the need of what we had as a district. So I'd say it probably wouldn't deviate too much. I'd probably put more time and effort into, and it's what we just haven't got there yet. Is like the VM side of it, running some more VMs, and the idea of a modular things working together to run something. So if there's downtime on one specifically, you don't lose everything. I'm a big advocate for redundancy, whether it's data or services or whatever. So, yeah.
Now that you've actually moved on to Xserves, you've obviously lost a lot of your enterprise level features that Xserves provides, like redundant power supplies and hot flexible parts. Have you experienced any hardware issues when you've moved over to other hardware, or are you fine with remotely managing everything now?
Sure. So great question. He said, since we moved off the Xserves, we lost a lot of the enterprise level kind of stuff that comes with it, backup power supplies for like RAID cards, et cetera, et cetera. All of our Synologies are on UPSs. That's about as best as we can do with them, unfortunately. But because of their price and the tiers of redundancy we do have, a hardware failure is going to cost us a lot less, because in comparison, the storage and stuff you're getting, depending on what it is. I had a friend that we know on Twitter. He had a rack unit and had a power supply go out. The rack units actually have those. We're using the models that are kind of the next tier down. So you can actually get, that tier through Synology if you want to go up to that price tier. So they're there. We just, like I said, that was kind of what I inherited. But what we ended up doing is they do have good, they are on UPSs, and they do have good UPS integrations. So you can actually, connect it down to the UPS. It can act as a UPS server for the local area. You just point it all back at the Synology. If Synology detects that the UPS goes on backup, hey, everybody shut down. Everybody shuts down. Then you got, so much left on your battery before it's gone.
So what about actual physical gear? Say like your MacAdmins power supply explodes. What's your downtime? What's your downtime before you get a technician out there? You keep technicians in your schools.
What up? So the question was like, what's downtime look like and stuff. We have a couple. We got secretary sitting on a Mac Mini. I'll yank it from a secretary and put because the way we have everything imaged and stuff, we could probably get it back up and running fairly quickly because of our redundancy. But we don't have a lot of we are the techs for our entire district. A lot of our end user support are at the elementaries or librarians that we've kind of encouraged and taught to kind of do a lot of that stuff. So if I could go back to the slide where stuff that we need to work on implementing, SNMP notifications, logging, stuff like that, where we can be ahead of the curve. And because we'll admit, I'll be the first one to admit we are not using any of that to its potential. And again, go back and look at some of those sessions on that stuff from here, because they were great. So, is there a hand over? Nope.
I guess I was just asking, I was going back on that. If, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a high school and they have their own Synology. That Synology goes down.
Yeah.
What type of mutiny are you going to have from your users for say it's at 4 o'clock on a Friday?
Well,
what are you guys going to do?
Yeah,
users respond to that.
Sure. What's nice is the majority of the users, especially at the high school, the kids are usually on iPads, so everything's cloud, or the teachers all have laptops. So the only thing that they're going to experience is they're just not going to sync. It'll just say, hey, I can't sync my stuff back. We're not really going to. All of our teachers have one-to-one MacBook Pros at the high school, so they still have all of their stuff locally. So, for us, it's not. But in our current structure, all it would be for us is to either replace it with a similar unit and put the drives back in, if it's a unit hardware issue, and once it verifies the drives, or replace the drives and bring it back down from the next tier up. So,
Have you had any failures?
no, we haven't had any failures yet. I had one of them freeze once.
Yeah, we had one drive die, we think, or was that the freeze?
No, that was Hoth. It just froze, ironically. So, I remember tweeting that. I was like, he made the mistake of letting me name them. So they are all planetoids in the Star Wars universe. So, yeah.
You can mitigate your risks with a lot of this stuff. If you want to be really hardcore, you can take a Mac Mini, you can put another Mac Mini.
Oh, yeah.
in mode
Yeah,
in your
totally.
room. You can take out the hard drive, put
Yeah.
in 2 SSDs, and put them in RAID 0, or RAID 1 rather. Buy a spare for the closet.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And that, for us as a school district, that's not, we are we're probably more redundant than a lot of places, but we're not, to that extent. Chris did.
I did have a question about your experience, and this is kind of drawing your experience with both QNAP and Synology.
Sure.
I was in a conversation where somebody related to me that QNAP's official policy for support is that you go through the reseller.
Correct, yeah.
Who bought the unit.
Yes, correct.
Which, since I'm likely to buy those on Amazon,
Yes.
seems a little bit nuts.
Yes.
Can you talk about QNAP versus Synology support a little bit?
Sure. I've never had to deal with Synology support. I can only speak through a friend, Steve. At SWY on Twitter. That's it. That's his handle. He had some experience with Synology. His issue was more that they had drives on. I mentioned him earlier. They had drives on the list that weren't as compatible as they'd like. But in the end of it, for all the trouble he went through, he ended up getting an entire new rack unit out of it, shipped to him, and stuff like that. The only issues I had with, in my days of QNAP, was I had to actually rebuild a volume, and we had purchased it through CDW. So I had to contact CDW, but they immediately put in a ticket for me with QNAP, and I had a QNAP representative calling me. So I guess it depends on if you buy it through Amazon or you buy it through CDW or something like that on the QNAP side. So.
Well, listening to the presentation, my kind of assumption was this is what we're doing with student data, but it sounds like you're doing this with student data and teacher data.
Yeah.
And so how does that, so you mentioned earlier that you said, we're only backing up what we have to back up. And
Yeah.
the teachers, so it sounds like the teachers are storing something that's not in desktop or documents, that's not getting backed up.
Correct, yes.
Okay, how much of a transition was it training users that it has to go in this folder?
Terrible. And it's not all there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the syncing over and stuff, it's like if you have it sitting in your home, like your home directory, that stuff's not going to get, it's been quite a challenge thus far to get them. And it's a spread. Like a lot of the young, and I don't want to, I don't want to throw age at it, but a lot of the younger teachers who get the idea of, hey, this is a cloud, like they're just using Drive. And a lot of people love to put stuff on their desktop, so that hasn't been that much of an issue. But yeah,
the biggest place we've seen this is at our high school, where they were, before they got their MacBook Pros, they were pretty much all Windows machines, and we had mapped their H drive to the root level of their folder. So not everything, a lot of things are not in the Mac folder structure. And as they're syncing, they're not seeing that information. So that's kind of where we're training them, is, okay, this is why you're not seeing this, because it's not where it's supposed to be, type thing. Fortunately, it's only been a handful of users, and they've caught on, very quickly. So.
And there was like one user who had 10 gigs free, like on her home disk, and it was just like, okay, you need to go buy a little passport because we don't need your home your home movies cannot be on, we can't be responsible to keep your home movies safe. So a lot of it is just that communication with the staff and stuff.
If you're really looking to move to cloud and your Google, I work in education too, there's an app for Mac, it's called Mac to Any, and it'll allow you to select a designated folder and sync it to Google Drive, and it'll do it by itself in the background. It's a Mac app, it's free, and it works with education.
Okay,
It's definitely
sweet.
a way to go, rather than just syncing.
Sync to any?
It's a Mac to Any.
Mac to any?
And it
Okay,
works with
sweet.
Google Drive, Dropbox, and a couple other ones.
All right, hey, well, we have 40 seconds left, so we're going to hang out. We'll hang out for a little bit if you just want to come talk to us or whatever. So thanks so much, and enjoy the conference.
Yeah.
Oh, and Sean has a session tomorrow morning, 2 years and 1,400 computers, so that's going to be awesome. We'll be back again to talk about how we deployed that many machines. So.